All right, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever in the world you are, and welcome to episode 4 of Where's the Balance. I emphasize episode 4 because we weren't sure exactly what episode we are. It's not like we have a litany of 100, but both Randall and I are getting old, and so we have to trust what we see sometimes. My name is Rawle James. I'm one of your hosts, and like I said, welcome to Where's the Balance. This is a thoughtcast. Thoughtcast, where two laymen, dads, man, human, have conversations about the topic of the day and just to discuss. This is not a debate. This is a discussion seeking understanding. I think we've got enough. I'm all for debating, but I think when you have debates that don't have all the intel or the sensationalized, you're really not debating. You're yelling and screaming, and we don't want to yell and scream. We want to talk and dialogue and understand why people think and feel the way they do. So having said that, this is our first episode as well where we have an invited guest, and I'm really excited to talk with this woman. And I say this woman right now because I'm going to allow my co-host, my esteemed colleague Randall, to introduce our guest. Randall.
Thank you so much, Rawle. It is episode 4. And just before we get into my little bio that Jenny shared with us and how we go what feels like an unknown amount of time back, I want to highlight just on something that Rawle said. And I follow Adam Grant on Twitter and Instagram and a few other places, but this specific post, I screenshotted it, saved it to my device, speaks exactly to what Rawle's already said about the loudest voices in this post, and I'm going to read it verbatim. By Adam Grant, the loudest voices rarely represent the majority. They're usually speaking for the extremes. You won't understand the views of a group until you've invited the quieter voices into the discussion. Don't mistake silence for disengagement. It's often a sign of deep reflection. And that speaks totally to, end statement. That speaks totally to where you started with, right? The loudest voices, we're having discussions, not debates, yeah. and to gain knowledge and to gain understanding. And so that one has stuck out to me. It's been sitting there for 2 weeks as it jumped out at me. And clearly, we let the world and the universe, uni being one verse, we all speak to tell us what we want to say, where we're going to go, have our ideas, whatnot. That clearly came to me to share here because it echoed already once. As for Jenny, thank you for joining us today. Pardon me. Welcome to the show. It's an honor to have our first guest, and it to be you. I'm super stoked. Jenny and I have known each other for an unknown amount of years. It's been since kindergarten, preschool, maybe somewhere in there. Yeah. There's a lot of years, and there's a lot of years in that mix where, although we were still connected, we were not connected at the same space, and there was always that kind of that understanding or that respect, that mutual, right? Like when you're in town next, or hey, let's one of our favorite things, I think one of mine anyway. Here's a good memory. I really feel like I need a coffee. We should go for a coffee. And it's like we're in like grade 7, grade 8, grade 6, maybe even, and the nearest Tim Hortons to where we were, and sit and talk and talk and talk and talk, right? And our parents weren't worried about where we were, and everybody, kind of knew. It was like if we're not home by a certain time, we're probably together.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is back when, if you wanted to find somebody, you actually had to pick up your house phone and call their parents because there was no way to reach us.
Yeah,
Question,
or
Rawle?
actually go to the place.
Right?
Sorry, a house phone? What's that?
This is, hey, after the rotary, we had dial tone and punch pads. We didn't have to circle the numbers around.
Saskatchewan.
Yep.
Carrier pigeons, horse and buggy.
Saskatchewan viewers, I'm sorry.
You know what? I think we're used to that Saskatchewan view. It is what it is. So, without further ado, I asked Jenny to give us a bio and to share that with us. So I do want to read that bio that you shared with us, Jenny. A teacher by profession, a card reader, a healer, Reiki practitioner master, a channeler, medium, and akashic record, as well. All of that and more. But wait, there's more. A mom to a 16-year-old boy, an indigenous woman who practices the traditions, a student, and a teacher at all times. So welcome, Jenny.
Thank you. That was a good intro. Yeah.
Well, you know, it's good having you here. And you know, this morning, you know, after going through my emails and doing my meditation and having a chat with the universe, and then I come in and do my emails and stuff and watching some videos, and you know, it's like, you know, we live in this world where everyone wants to know what a Hollywood celebrity has to think about what's going on. And I'm like, you know what? I remember having a thought this morning with my first cup of coffee going, I'm so glad Randall and I started a podcast where we get to talk to everyday people. And it's not that celebrities aren't everyday, but I really don't care what Leonardo DiCaprio thinks about a subject. Like he's some expert on whatever. Now, I may value his opinion, but just because he's a celebrity doesn't mean anything. It means more coming from everyday people, my fellow humans. So that's why I think, you know, we're excited. I'm excited because, you know, I came into contact with you because of Randall when I was looking for a healer when I first came back to Toronto, and just trying to figure out my next steps, because like most humans, I'm impatient. And you know, when I was in Kelowna, I was used to running around and being busy and doing all this stuff. And anyway, and so I you know, Randall and I used to get together every Saturday morning and just talk and shoot a crap over coffee. And I was mentioning that to him, and he goes, well, I have a good friend, Jenny, and I said, oh, okay, well, reach out to her and see if she'll talk to me. And then I think a few weeks passed, he forgot. Life, you know, life gets busy. It's not, you know, my attitude is, you know, when you're listening to your story about, you know, you guys have known each other since pre-kindergarten, but you've had moments where you don't see each other long. My attitude is you connect when you're supposed to connect. That's why you don't really have to worry about, oh, you don't call me anymore. No, if we really need to connect, we'll connect. So yeah, I asked him again, and he said, oh, dude, I'm sorry. I said, oh, sorry, I'll trust the timing. And then he reached out to you, introduced us through Facebook Messenger. And then I just trusted her because I trust Randall. I trust the people that he would attract in his life. And if he knows I'm looking for a healer, he's not going to send me to someone that he doesn't is vibing at the same frequency. So I just instantly said what I wanted. And so, yeah, so it was, you know, we had a brief chat, but I'm really looking forward to getting to know you. I mean, your stuff on your Facebook shows into my timeline, and, you know, I like it and take a look. You know, maybe I'm a bit of a voyeur. I like watching people, what they show. But, you know, you can't sit there and assume you know someone just from watching their Facebook feed, but you at least get a little glimpse into not who they are, but their lives. So, yeah, anyway, I'm just so blessed and honored that you're here today and willing to share space with us and share your insights, you know, in regards to how you see things and all that. So yep, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just like, yeah, I'm down for that. I'm a Libra, so I'm always about the balance. And
okay, well, balance is important. So
yeah.
Randall, you want to start us off with a question, or do you want me to, or how do you want to do this?
Let's start with you, Rawle. I'm in such like a happy kind of empty space here right now, and empty being good. There's not a ton of chaos going on the inside, so I have no immediate thoughts. So I'm gonna let you drive this one here.
Well, you know, before we turned on the recording, we were talking about how we're doing and you know, being present and being in the now. I was saying earlier how I feel, you know, so present right now that it really allows me to see the situations that are coming not full circle, almost 360. So I know what to deal with and what the situation is asking of me. So that's, you know, that I think that's a really good place to start, because as a healer and someone that I believe is plugged into the universe and what's going on in the world of energy and so forth, How important do you think it is to help people to understand the importance of being present in dealing with all the nonsense? And I'm not looking to pick a topic to talk about, but just overall as a healer.
Great question.
Well, I would have to say being in the present moment, that's where the magic happens, because like we have all this energy floating around, and being in the present moment, we could see the magic happening right before our eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And we can only control the present moment. We can't worry about tomorrow, and we can't worry about what happened yesterday. We have to be in the now to be open to everything.
Mm-hmm.
And things just naturally balance out in that present moment. I'm like, whoa. Like, I know sometimes when my thoughts go away, like escape me, I bring myself to the tree. The tree is doing what the tree is supposed to do. It doesn't care about what's happening in the Ukraine. It doesn't care about the politics. It doesn't care about Johnny Depp's trial. Okay.
I don't care about Johnny Depp.
It's doing what it's supposed to do. It's
Yeah.
taking, and it's a complete cycle. So that's how being in the present moment, I think, is vital. And it is hard to get used to it at times, but you know, the more present you are, the more easier it gets.
Yeah. So let me segue with that. If and working with energy, so specifically through card reading or Reiki practitioning, working in that element, clearly you know how to center yourself and how to protect yourself from the energies of others around you, especially in a very intimate environment such as those. How do you said, you know, the magic happens when you're present. How do you, and this is going to go right with what Rawle said, how do you bring that person back into that present? And not necessarily that you're looking to fix, or it's the encouragement or the understanding that in order to receive what you're able to do with them, whether they're in front of you, and I mean, and I've seen this through your posts and some communications, you can do this virtually too, right? You can move energy and adjust energy through Reiki, akashic, and oracle reading in a virtual environment. But if that person's not centered or focused or in their space, they're not the tree. And the tree is a great example. I've taken classes too that speak specifically to be the tree, find your roots and find your top, and you're the space in between, being centered. How do you focus, or how do you move that? Because if that person isn't centered, are they as open to the healing, or does the healing do exactly what it needs to do?
Well, with Reiki, it goes to where it's needed. So if that person needs to be in the present moment, like if I'm sending healing, that person has to, like you said, they have to be open. And with distance Reiki, it usually comes in the sleep when we are just completely clear and nothing is bothering us. Mm-hmm. If I'm doing a session on Reiki, I do the breathing exercise with them, because our breath will bring us back to this moment. Mm. And as for the tarot, I tell them, I'm like, this is for your present moment. Like when I took my classes, it was update to the now. We're always updating to the now. And the cards will reflect what is needed now and what the possible outcome of this now is, depending on which situation you want to go with it. So.
Right. For our listeners that may not know, can you just give a quick overview of what Reiki is?
Yeah, like for me, Reiki is working with a person's energy and moving it throughout the body, because we're all energetic beings. Mm-hmm. Moving that energy through that body to where there's more resistance, and clearing that, because we can all essentially heal ourselves. It's just some of us need to tap into it and need that extra boost.
Right.
It's kind of like a vitamin shot for the
That's
energy.
A great analogy. I like that.
Yeah, it is. And it's not like hands-on in a sense. You're not physically massaging or touching someone, correct?
In person, I can. It all depends on who it is. Like, okay. I always ask permission. Can I touch your body? And if I get the okay, I can. Mm-hmm. If not, I don't have to. Right. And virtually, of course, I can't touch them, but I have like my little Reiki baby. It's just a little stuffed animal, and I put the Reiki there, and then I send it to that individual.
Okay. Because my sister does Reiki as well, and I don't watch her in session, but she's done it on me, and seems very similar vibe. And if you look on my wall, you'll see the chakras. That's her banner. So yeah, I just because a lot of people hear the term Reiki, and I don't know how many people actually really understand it. And and I think a lot of these practices are all about energy, because you're right, we are energy beings, and the energy is supposed to flow, not get stuck in any one area of the body. So it's important. And I think it's so apropos for today, because with the madness that's going on, there almost seems to be an increase in mental deficiency. And I'm not talking about mental illness, mental deficiency in our ability to cognitively think, to critically think, to be in the moment. And I loved when you talked about the present, because for me, most people are either fearful of what's to come, or they're stuck with something in the past that they haven't resolved and dealt with. And this is why it's so hard to be present. For me, it's not even the thoughts that show up in the moment. I don't control a lot of the thoughts that show up. So I don't give the ones that are just idiotic, or the ones that, the different voices in your head, each voice has a job. And if they're doing that job by having those thoughts, I go, knock yourself out, because the orchestra, the conductor, has final say what the orchestra does. So, so you do Reiki, you read cards, and I have my oracle cards that I use with my clients as well. How did you get into being a healer? Is this something that you were born with and you always did?
Can I answer before you do and say, yes, it is something she was born with and could always do. We have that knowledge and experience with each other, but that's just because I can say that.
Okay, well,
sorry. Back to Jenny.
She'll answer that question, but that's actually a good, because you've known this woman for your whole life, outside of maybe 3-4 years. So when did you notice there was something different about my Jenny?
I don't know if it was ever something different. Right. It is where, and you and I have talked about this before, and Jenny and I have talked about this before. So what great, we're all in the same virtual room. When your vibe is right and you vibe with the other people who have a similar vibe or similar, right? Like when energy wants to mix with energy, it's a positive engagement, right? When they clash away from each other, you have a negative engagement. I hate physics, so let's stay away from that. But I always knew, right? As a kid, this is just like that person that is on the same spiritual level, emotional level, mental level, physical level. All the pieces line up. So I don't know your word of when did I know it was different. I don't think that's quite the case, because I think, we may have been different to everybody else. I mean, we had some similar experiences through school for different reasons, but similar experiences. Because I think we accepted that we were different, that our vibe was right, and that we were okay, and that everybody else was actually the different ones. We were way more connected, and just, this is like when we were best friends until you moved, right, Jenny? Like we were, not saying we're not now, just we were together a lot. Birthday parties, our parents knew each other, we did, like, our brothers knew each other, right? Like we did a lot of stuff together between the two households. That clearly the vibe was right all the way around, right? I mean, our moms were friends, right? Our brothers were acquaintances. I don't know so much as friends, but definitely could be in the same space as each other. We definitely shared, household space, and I could walk in the door of your house, or you could walk in the door of my house. You were just a family member, right? You weren't somebody's friend, your family. And I think that part, right? That's the moment where you just know. And I mean, it is clearly vibed for over 30 years. So clearly it's about just your people. You find your people, and you find ways to stay connected to your people. And if you move on and you're not connected to that person anymore. You may, maybe the energies change, the vibes change, but maybe you weren't supposed to be in each other's story for life, and that you were just a player in their journey, or they were a player in your journey, and you were meant to learn something or teach something. And once the job is done, it's done.
It's done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have a moment, Jenny, when you were younger that said, there's something different about me in regards to how I perceive the universe or energy? Did anything happen, or was it just something you came into this world with just knowing?
Well, I think like what Randall was saying, I was born with it, but I didn't exactly know what it was. And I'm like, okay. So I just kind of vibed with it, went with it. And then it kind of hit me. Like I was playing with one of my neighborhood friends, and I scraped my knee real bad. Like I was running on gravel and I slipped, and like it was all bloody and whatnot. And I just grabbed a leaf from a tree. Don't know what kind of leaf. It was just a leaf. And I put it on, and the bleeding stopped instantly. And I'm like, that's cool. Like,
I want to do more of that stuff.
Yeah. And that was, I don't know, about 6-ish. But like I want to share a memory that I had with Randall, and it was when we were in band. Like we both played the trumpet, and we were always in competition of what instrument was the loudest. And the saxophones were saying like, oh, we're the loudest, and we're like, oh yeah, because there was only 3 of us. And we would always overpower. But then I sit back and like I listen to orchestra music now, and it's like that was us saying that we're different. We are the different ones. And then I know me and Randall went back in our past, and of all the timelines and like all the spaces, why was it that me and him met up together in kindergarten and we're best friends up until like from kindergarten on? We're both healers, we're both readers. And it's like, was anyone else like that? We don't know, but that's how we jived.
Yeah. I remember the moment I told Randall he was a healer. I don't know if he ever identified with it or he ran away from it or embraced, but I remember, like I said, one of those Saturday mornings chat with him and telling him that, and because he had shared an experience of helping, I think, a cousin or something, a family member. And I said, dude, you're a healer. Like, and at first he kind of, I don't know if he knew how to take it, but I just remember the expression on his face. And every so often I remind him, you are a healer. And we all have, our different ways of healing, right? Some people connect to it, some people never do. Some people connect to it and not even know they're healing. They just are, and people come to them for it. So I find it interesting that, because all I know is when I was a kid, I always had this feeling I was supposed to do something important, but I don't know what that means. I didn't know how to articulate it. That's why sometimes I still scratch my head when I think of what I do and how people look at me and my words. They say your words are healing. Your words have a way of reaching to my soul. I'm like, okay, I don't know what that means, but sure. But I guess we do know what it means, and maybe it's just us trying to stay humble, whatever it is. But I do think we know, and I think so. The question, I guess, is: do you think that's part of the power of the medicine? Is knowing who you are, knowing your gifts, and knowing how to use them?
Up to a point, like, what is it that Colette Baron Reid says? You take one step to the gods, and they take 10 steps towards you. Like, we take that first step of identifying what our gifts and our natural talents are, right. And then they step in and they're like, okay, she found this, let's run with this, because this is what they want to do. What else? And like, I think some of us may just have shut down, and it scares them, and they don't realize like that they two are also powerful beings of the universe,
Mhm.
and that energy can flow through them if we want it to. But a lot of us, like addiction and negative thoughts, that's a big one. Negative thoughts,
Negative
I
thoughts, yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
that stops the energy flowing, and it's hard to get going.
Mhm.
But just knowing that we can initiate that healing again,
Right.
and that we can keep going even though we don't know what we're doing half the time. Like, how many of us know what we're doing half the time? It's like, okay, I'm just gonna give you this crystal because, it's pretty.
You're
But
generous
we,
half the time.
yeah, and I
Maybe
think that,
maybe a quarter of the time I might know what I'm doing. Half the time
yeah,
I'll be lucky if it was half the time.
yeah, and I think our spirit just kind of works through us,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
lets a body know, like, okay, this is where we're gonna go.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
And I agree. I think it is all energy. As I was saying, when my daughter passed this, I think that's one of the main reasons I was able to deal with it so well, because her body passed, the body left, but the energy, the essence, her body was named Irie, not her spirit. Her spirit doesn't have a name. Our energy doesn't have a name. So knowing that and believing what I believed, I knew that I would mingle with that energy in another form somewhere down the line, but that connection to the energy hasn't stopped. It's just the physical body is moved, is past. I still feel her energy, although the bulk of her energy is off to the next experience. And so I just find it funny that when a lot of healers, or even some of my religious friends, they say they believe, but then when things really go bump in the night, they run away from what they say they believe. So I like what you're saying, and I hope people, when they're listening, will really listen to that, because I agree. It's a negative. It's not so much the negative thoughts. It's the thoughts that come in that we then add to our internal story, that we then go around the hamster wheel with. And I always tell people, stop wasting your energy on trying to stop thoughts. Focus on the thoughts you are going to add to your internal story that you're then going to put into the world. That's what you have control over. So, and everyone has their way of saying it or different, but I think right now in this world today, we need energy workers to really step up and to speak through their healing, and to use their words as well, but to use their gifts to help people to, I don't want to say open up, but maybe to learn how to stand still and be good with who they are. So they
Acceptance.
Can deal with, so they can deal with the moment. So as a teacher as well, so what grade do you teach? Are you elementary, middle, high school, all teaching?
Well, this past year I was teaching grade 7, and I was also a teaching coach at the school. And then this coming fall, I am now a high school teacher. So I'll be teaching like the arts and the cooking and sciences.
Right.
So,
do you ever bring your healing into your classrooms at all, or is that something that you keep separate?
I bring it in every day. Like, I can read the room.
Yeah.
And if a student is having issues, I will pull that student aside and I'll make sure they're good. I also send Reiki to the classroom, like to the actual room, so that things can run smoothly. And like, more often than not, it's about establishing relationships with the kids and being able to pull that kid aside and realize, like, okay, what's going on? And it opens up the door to let them know that you're okay. You're the okay person. Like yesterday, I had a student inbox me having a mental breakdown because of a bunch of things going on in her life. And she was like, I want to kill myself. And I stopped her. And I said, no, they're doing that because you're above them, like mentally and physically. Like, you're a top-notch athlete, you're an artist. But when you're succeeding, living your best life, they're just going to be there bad mouthing everyone that rises above them. Don't let them bring you down.
Right.
And she's like, that makes me feel so much better. Thank you.
And here's like, cheers, I'm out of coffee, but cheers to a teacher still working with her students in the off season, right? Your teaching job never ends. I respect that. So I want to highlight that. I recognize teachers never stop. There's always something, planning, preparing, right? You're establishing the vibe in your classroom before you even walk into this space, right? Like you're on 20 of 24 hours a day, preparing and expecting, manipulating energy, right? Just working for the best outcomes.
Yeah.
But cheers to you for taking a moment, right? And this goes beyond the teacher-student relationship. This is a human-human relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody came to you and highlighted a problem. You worked through it with them. It irrelevant of teacher-student relationship or knowledge between each other, but the fact that you highlighted, right, it was teacher-student, right? And this individual came to you and you talked through it with them. A big applause to you, even for just being able to stop and acknowledge, right, a student process but human to human experience, being able to have that conversation and work through it. And another day here is a great day.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And like, it just comes natural to me. Like you said, a human to human. I don't view students as little people. Like, I view them as human beings. They are, like, I don't know what it's like being a teenager, going through a pandemic, going through all this crap that the world is dishing out. Like that's scary. Us as adults, we're like, do I have enough money to pay for the groceries? Like, we have our own stuff.
Yeah.
But to be a kid in this day and age, like, Randall, think about if we were teenagers, like, we would be losing our minds.
Freaking minds.
Yeah. So they need all the support that they can get. And if we could just sit and listen and give them that space, that does wonders to these people,
humans.
Yeah.
I was listening to a psychologist last night talking about this very thing, and how not just COVID, but how social media has really shaped these last few generations, and not necessarily in a very positive way. You know, suicide rates are high these days, not just because of COVID, but a lot of it probably has to do with the overconsumption of social media and the nonsense that's on social media, shaming and all these things that goes on. I'm not a person that believes any one thing is all bad, but man, in today's world, it's hard to find anything positive about social media other than the fact it allows us to connect, because I just see the garbage that's being pushed. And it doesn't matter whether you're conservative or liberal or red or blue, whatever, black, white, it doesn't matter. It's just this constant barrage of misinformation or false information or crap that
or incomplete information
information that they're absorbing. So as a teacher, have you've been teaching for a while, have you noticed a difference in your students? I'm not any one particular, but just a difference in their behavior with the ramp up of social media over the last few years. Have you noticed the difference?
Yeah, like the anxiety is through the roof with these guys, and I'm like, put the cell phone down. You don't need to answer that snap. Just be in the moment, because that's where we need to be. Who cares what that person thinks? Because those are just thoughts. They're like clouds. Who cares? And it enhances their anxiety and their depression, and it's like,
I think we have to, and I completely agree with you, but I think we have to find another way to tell them, put the phone down, and it's just thoughts. Because I remember when we were kids would say stuff and it affects us, and we weren't bombarded with the constant that they are, but it definitely is. And I'm trying to think about how do you tell these young ones to not worry about things. It's funny, I was watching another video last night on interviewing millennials for a job.
Well, welcome the boomer to the room.
Yeah, it was hilarious because the guy, it's an older gentleman, and I think they purposely casted it that way to drive a point home. And it's this young girl, on her phone in an interview, and the gentleman's reading her resume. And he goes, "I see you're really good with technology. So are you good with like Microsoft Word and Excel and or publishing?" She goes, "What's that?" He goes, "You're good with technology." He goes, "Yeah, I'm good with Snapchat and TikTok and Instagram." And he's looking, okay. She goes, "The big ones." and then he goes, "I noticed you didn't say Facebook." And she goes, "Ugh, that's for old people." But it's so true. That's what they're good at. So when they think technology, they think of these social media apps that they're constantly on. And we as adults have to take responsibility for this. We gave it to them. We encouraged them to use it, or not encourage them to not be on it all the time. I know my middle son Zen had a major problem with video games, and because his mother would just like constantly on it, and when you take it away, it's like punishing, right? So what other messaging can we use to encourage these young ones to find a balance with social media, to find a balance with their smartphone? That
Yeah,
it's not
a phrase that sticks out to me on that, Rawle. Sorry, a phrase that sticks out to me is a conversation I had with a high level executive owner of a business, CEO type individual who hired a life coach well before I learned enough about myself to realize that through healing and through all the other things that I can do, we are all life coaches, either of our own life or we share our experiences and somebody else can learn from it, from our life, therefore life coaching. He'd hired a life coach, and the phrase they gave to this very topic, he called it the official freedom fighter. It's the off button. It's OFF. and not calling it like, don't power off, don't turn it off, don't whatever. Find your official freedom fighter. Whatever that off is,
like
whether it's your work email, your professional life, you go home to your family, and here, let me use this millennial conversation. We've learned, and I'm an elder millennial, so I mean, I'm not far into the, you and me both, Jenny, you and me both. We've helped form the work-life conversation to the life-work conversation, right? And I think that is where society might be losing a little bit of what it wants. North American society more explicitly is losing its luster and is grasping at everything to bring it back, because we learned from two parents working, right? And those parents learned from one parent working, one parent at home. And I mean, economies and everything, this all changes, right? And this isn't just one government to the next or one country to the next. We have evolved into this necessity in our environments for most of our population, where we grew up with two parents working, and that had to stay because our financial independence doesn't allow for us not to have certain things, right? Or we want certain things. The only way to pay for it is to work. But we are looking at that work-life balance and realizing the balance in that isn't balanced in our favor, right? We spend 7, 8, 9, 10 hours of our day working, and we spend 8 hours of that sleeping. Doesn't leave a lot of time for the life in between, right? Here's from our other buddy, the space between, right? Live the dash. What is the dash when you're committing, and Jenny was a teacher, and I know the word on the street is you get 2 months off, but you don't really get 2 months off a year, right? You're in a classroom and ready to go from 8 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Then you got to go home and be a parent. You have a 16-year-old, right? I have a 14-year-old. Rawle has older children, but has lived through these exact things as well. Somewhere between leaving work and getting home, you have to disconnect one, reconnect the next, make your home life matter, make things happen at home, and try not to be pissy and grouchy about the things that happened at work or the people you had to work with or that one person, because somehow there's always one person. And not let that affect you in the home space, because that's not your kid's problem. But then somewhere along the way, you need to unload that energy. And sometimes it is just you're unloading that energy to the kind of the first person you see, or your reaction to the first thing that comes up. And then you have to go to bed at night. Right. So, like, I mean, you're really at home, you know, in the moment. Your opportunities like 6 hours of your day. By that point, and that's 6 hours, you've got to decompress, reprogram, reframe, get into the moment, be a mom, be a dad, be you know, a caregiver of whatever sort it may be, and then put them to bed, put yourself to bed, and get up tomorrow and do it again. That's all work. That life space is really short. And I think we see that kind of echo throughout, right? I mean, it wasn't the boomers and it wasn't the millennials. We have been on this pathway for longer than we would probably ever be able to admit to. This is the direction we have moved, but we have always had working households, right? And I want to go a little bit into, you know, your traditions and whatnot, right? I mean, we can look ancestrally and see mom and dad, grandma, grandpa, their grandparents, right? Whoever was alive and whoever was able to support the tribe, the nation, the clan, whatever it might be, everybody worked. But there was a community aspect to that work because you worked with your family, you worked with your neighbors, you had good neighbors and bad neighbors, as you do today, but there was more cohesiveness. And I mean, and yes, there was wars, yes, there was invasions, yes, there was destruction, because people don't get along. We don't live here alone. I'm using Rawle's words there. But how right, like we've taken all of this and we've done all of this, and we're seeing the life work balance become more important than the work life balance, because life is far greater in value than the work. And as a healer, and as a, you know, for guidance and the counseling that you can do through the healing and through your traditional work, how do you see that? How does that impact you, and how do you work through that?
Okay, so that's a pretty low question. Well, I all I could say is when a lot of people were going through the lockdowns, they were like, "Oh my God, this is the worst thing ever." I loved it. Because
I did too. Can I just say I did too?
Yeah, because it gave me a chance to decompress and be who I am and not worry about the 8 to 5 work life. It gave me a chance to enjoy the work I have at home, enjoy the moment I have with my son, because like my parenting experience has been joyful. My son is like awesome. Sure, he's a sassy little person.
Good for him.
But
yes, good for him.
Good for him.
Yeah, but he is an honest, respectable young man, and I enjoyed seeing him grow up and share his experiences with me through that. So I don't really view being a parent as work, because I enjoy him. A lot of parents, I realize like they don't enjoy their kids. They don't take that time to get to know them and help them. But I digress with that on that point, because that's another completely different tangent. With traditions, I do the smudging and I don't push it onto anyone. Like my son, he's a Buddhist. Cool.
Right on.
Like, and he knows that like I smudge and I have drums and I do all that, and he's respectful to that. And he's sometimes when I'm all like up here, he's like, "Mom, go smudge." Okay, so I go and smudge, and then my energy just comes right back. And yeah, it's as for like, how can I put this? The decompressing and how I get through it, it's enjoying the spaces in between spaces. And I know like it took me a while to understand that. And I think it was in Indiana Jones, the Crystal Skull one. It was Oz who said the spaces in between spaces. And then I dug further and realized that that's what how our intuition and how our spirit operate. It's the spaces. And I was so much into that space that everything slowed right down.
Mhm.
And it just looked like everything was in super slow motion one day. And I'm like, whoa, this is cool, because I live in the bush and there's like constant wind, birds that are nonstop. And everything just kind of like right, like talking about right in the moment. And it's enjoying that peace. And like, you're meant to be here right now. Take it in.
Yeah.
I love that.
I think that's that's so well said, and it's so apropos, because a lot of things, you said a lot of things that I resonate with, but listening to when you and Randall mentioned it, and you talking about traditional practice, smudging is traditional, traditional in indigenous cultures here and indigenous around the world. Many people smudge. I still smudge. I have my smudge stick over here. And just listening to it, it highlights for me even more, because of the age we live in with such technology, that we feel that we have, and I'm generalizing, but we feel that we have to do away with almost everything that's old. If you pick up your phone now and go into the Apple Store, Google Play, you could find umpteen apps about meditating and yoga and all these things, and then some of these traditions that we've capitalized. And not that I want to bastardize or say something bad about capitalism, because it's a good system, but what we're practicing isn't that. That's another show that you're more than welcome to come back and talk about.
Definitely.
But traditions, and that's what I really picked up from you saying that, is like, because we're all parents here, and I don't know when things started to change in our society. Some people want to blame when women went into the workforce, because before that you had two parents at home. I don't put that on. To me, that's a stupid argument. To me, well, no, because I put it on our economic practices. Why do two parents have to now work, where before it was one parent could carry the household financially, but they saw one person working and the other one not working. So, this is why I disagree a little bit with you, Jen. Life is work. It's supposed to be. It's constant work. It's good work. It's hard at times, challenging, not impossible. And look at our ancestors. They worked. We have such convenience now. We feel that having to pick up a broom is hard labor work. It isn't. But my point is, there's some traditions that we are not remembering and not passing on, that's hindering family. And maybe it's hindering, or maybe we're trying to redefine what family means. But I myself still believe in the foundation of a man and a woman that creates life. Not saying it to be controversial. I'm just saying because that's what I believe. And I believe there are certain traditions from our past that we have completely ignored, like a rite of passage with young ones, not just males, females as well. Right? So there's a lot of indigenous, when I say indigenous, I don't necessarily want to just focus on natives here, because like I said, I think we're all indigenous from somewhere originally. But there's a lot of practices, there's a lot of traditions that we have foregone because of technology that's eroding away. So for someone that is native, whose ancestors are native to this country, because we're the immigrants, we came here, how important is it for you to try to maintain some of those practices that we don't forget? Because I think that's one of the problems, and particularly when people are trying to understand the native issue. Well, they want the lands back and so forth. I said, most of the intelligent ones that I speak with don't want the lands back. What they want is a say in governance in their lives. And how do we incorporate some of these traditional ways into modern life? Because too many people are trying to go back and fix the past. And the people that I know, like you're focused on how do we heal now to stay here now and work together, because we're in this. So that could be just my small-minded thinking, but from your perspective as a Native woman, how important are your traditions in not just maintaining them, but trying to practice them in a world where it doesn't seem to be valued and technology is everything? Because pretty soon there's going to be an app for smudging.
Let's just admit that factor right now. Somebody's
Yeah.
working on it already.
Full disclosure.
Well, for me as an Indigenous woman, a little bit of about my past is like my dad went to residential school, so it was like, no, you're not doing that. So it was important to me to like, I'm the type of person who's like, why is this? How is this? Like, I asked a million questions to one like freaking answer, you know? And my brother's like, Jen, you see more than two sides to a loony. You see like 18 different sides. It's like, yeah, I do.
Uh-huh.
And so I was asking those questions, and it was through curiosity that I met with some elders. And then I remember this clear as frickin' day, like it happened yesterday. We were at a powwow, like me and my brothers and my mom, and we went back home. This was about 12 o'clock at night, and we all heard drumming. We're like, what the crap? Except substitute the word crap for something
Yep.
else.
Uh-huh.
And it's like the spirits recognize, it's like game recognizes game. They're like, yep, it's you. So that's, we allowed spirit to contact us, and we went with that spirit. So, and as for like the environment and the land, we don't really want our land back. Like what you were saying, we want the land to be protected, because we know, like, we are very connected to the land. Like, like I know, I don't know how many times Randall's been up here, but down in Saskatoon, like, you can't see the stars.
Not well. Nope.
Yeah.
Most days, not at all. But yeah, I mean, Toronto, you're in a whole different game for that.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I had my head down shaking, because if you can't see it in Saskatoon, well, I
surely cannot.
I maybe see 5 stars at night because of the
Yeah.
city lights. So yeah.
But like up here, you could just walk outside, look up at night, see stars, see planets, see the northern lights, and that's
almost touch it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what we enjoy, because a lot of our stories come from the stars, a lot of our directions, and we need them, and we see the beauty and the vitality in that, and we want that protected for the next generation. Like my grandkids, I want my grandkids to experience that.
You know, I'm gonna not stop you. I'm gonna interject for a second, because I swear I just heard your grandma talk. You know, and I met this lovely lady only a handful of times, but yeah, I did know her. And I remember, you know, I think maybe inside her house once, at her front door several times. She would have been at, you know, at your house whenever I was there, Jenny, for many different things. But I just heard your grandma speak. Those would have been very similar words. It was never about the power, the control, or the gaining it back. It was the balance of, this is why we do this. This is how we do this. And let's make sure this stays protected while this thing over here can happen. Right. I got Rawle would call them goddess bumps. I just
I'm still vibing, but you know, it's true, and this is why I think it's so important to hear voices like Jenny. You know, I don't think we're hearing true representation of Indigenous voices in this country. I think everything is so politicized now, you don't know. The elders that I've gotten to know when I was in Kelowna, and one of the things, you know, I've been, you know, it's been a few months I'm back here. I want to start connecting to the Indigenous tribes in this area and get to know the elders here. You know, for me, one of the biggest problems is the fact that, you know, we've had governments that have not, my understanding, probably not honored any treaty that they've ever negotiated in supposedly good faith, number one. This prime minister is a representation of past prime ministers that during an election cycle will tell you how important the indigenous issue is. It's not an indigenous issue. They don't have like cancer. You know, I hate when people use the indigenous issue. What the heck does that mean? You're talking about human beings. But more importantly is that this messaging of they want their land back keeps us divided. I have met, true story, when I was running the Inspired Word back in Kelowna, which was an open mic show that I started. And a good friend of mine, Diane Lasback, who's since passed, indigenous woman, got to know her and her poetry and just was blown away by her. And I invited her to come in and share some of her poetry, because I've always was trying to connect with the indigenous population in Kelowna. It was very difficult to get them to come out and do things. And then from spending time in their environment, I got to understand the lack of trust that they have. And so, and I get it. I'd always say to them, I said, I get it, but you know, you can't give up. You got to keep trying. Anyway, Diane decided to come out, and then she came back again. And then I decided I wanted to feature her. I just thought she needed a chunk of time to not just share her poetry, but her story. And this woman, man, survivor, hero, whatever, it doesn't even cut this walk this woman had. Anyway, so I'm introducing her and doing the traditional thing. She's the one that actually told me to stop doing land acknowledgement. And then and then when I did her bio and all this, and she got up and she goes, "Oh, Rawle, thank you for that introduction." And she goes, "This isn't our land. This is our land." Right? She goes, "We don't want it back. We want a different conversation and how we live together." So I didn't get into it, but then she did a feature. Everyone came up with great, and it was just an amazing connection and time. And then we went for coffee afterwards. And I said, why would you say that? I've never heard an indigenous person say that they don't want the land back. She goes, and she looked me dead in the eye and she goes, "Do you ever see a time where we're going to get the land back?" I was like, no. She goes, "Exactly." She goes, "We need to stop saying that nonsense." She goes, "We're not getting the land back. We don't want the land back. What we want is recognition, true recognition, not platitude, not treaties that mean nothing, not acting like us being here is some sort of a matter of fact, or you know, we left Uncle Joe at grandma's house and we forgot about him there." She goes, this is why when people say the indigenous issue, I have a problem, because whenever I hear that, I think of her and that conversation we had. And we had an honest conversation as a woman, excuse me, there's Aboriginal, but she goes, "I'm Aboriginal," but she goes, "I'm a descendant of those indigenous people, just like you're a descendant of those people from Africa." And I said, damn, you're right, because we act like when we talk about indigenous, we're talking about the ones that lived 400 or 500 years ago today. It's the same issue people talk about when they talk about slavery. They act like the original slaves are the same ones that were there when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. She goes, "No, we're all descendants of something." She goes, "Think about the sacrifice that many people made, indigenous, the original settlers. The original settlers didn't come here to harm us. They came here running persecution and realized they needed the indigenous knowledge to survive, and they welcomed it." So from talking to the elders, I got to understand this whole thing different. This is why our honorable prime minister in Ottawa drives me crazy. I say that, I'm trying to be respectful, because his first campaign was about how the indigenous issue was the top priority, and I haven't seen that. And that's a reflection of how we politicize indigenous. Sorry, go ahead.
I think, you know, you highlighted one thing for me, and it's breaking into another as well in my head, but you stated you invited, and they didn't come. They, collective, generalizing, But when you went there, you understood. And I think that is the primary part of the conversation. Jenny is an Indigenous woman living in a primarily Indigenous portion of Saskatchewan. How, and I'm going to use the two of us. How can I develop a policy if I don't know anything about where you live and the grounds that you live on and the area and the environment and all of those bits? The second part to this, right? Once I go there and I learn and I understand and I appreciate, and I've been there and I understand and that aside, when you put yourself into the environment, into the culture, into the space to accept the knowledge that may be handed to you, well above the rituals and the rites, the passing of the pipe and stuff, right? We're honoring an important person in our presence, so we go through all these steps, right? Going past that, but really learning and understanding. When you go to the individual, and this goes well beyond, right? Or if I come to you and say, I give you permission because I want to learn more, I want to understand more, open this up, which we've had conversations about in the spiritual aspect, in Akashic Records, even more specifically, I had to remove myself from my own environment and put myself in somebody else's and say, teach me, learn me, help me. And in that case, in that circumstance between you and I, help me understand me, help me get to where I have more awareness and more self. And I think that, right, we are creating policies, or we're watching individuals create policies that have limited knowledge on what those policies actually mean or how they can be played out. I mean, Saskatchewan, prime example, we might be the land of water because there's a shit ton of it. But if you're in La Ronge, if you are surrounded by rocks, how do you plan piping from a river with water treatment and whatever? Now, I mean, I know La Ronge has a water treatment plant, and I know all these other things, but I mean, we can go as far north as Clearwater, similar types of examples. You're surrounded by rocks and trees. What is it going to take to do that? It's far more than a policy. It's understanding the geography and the people that live in the geography area specific, and the geography of Canada, because that line of rocks runs coast to coast. On the other side of that line of rocks is 3 feet of frozen tundra, 350 days of the year, right? If you don't understand the environment and the places that you're trying to put the things in, how can you even begin to understand how a policy may or may not affect an individual? And that's the unfortunate reality. We are calling this a policy and an issue, and we are talking about people, human life force energy. The second part where I wanted to go with this was, damn it, and I've lost it. And it was more down the traditional pathway of the sharing, the knowledge. I'm so sorry, I got lost on that tangent. It's gone. It may come back to me, or it may have to be another show.
It wasn't obviously meant to be said if it comes.
Nope.
Yeah.
But I know up here in La Ronge, we look at the south and it's a completely different environment. Your weather right now, what's it like down there?
A little bit cloudy, kind of wants to rain. It's supposed to be 26 with the humidex today.
Yeah, and us, we're sitting at minus or plus 15 here. It's sunny, a little bit cloudy, but even our weather is completely different. And yet we're only 4 hours away.
Yeah.
And a lot of people down south think that Prince Albert and Saskatoon is the center of Saskatchewan. I'm more or less closer to the center of Saskatchewan. It's an hour south from me.
Okay.
But like what Randall was saying, we have so many rocks and lakes and trees up here. Where are we going to put the infrastructure? We can blast rocks, but what's that doing to our environment? It's really loud because they were rock blasting 2 years ago, and everyone in La Ronge heard it. And
it's not just the people; it's the other creatures that we share this that it affects.
Exactly.
That was the other part. I remember what it was,
and they feel it more, probably more than we do. So
and that was the other part. That was part two of my thought process, was when we talk about, or when we hear individuals, we want our land back. Traditionally, Jenny, and I'm submersed somewhat into and in and out of some of the indigenous thoughts and practices and teachings and traditions within the province due to own personal stuff. Is there not an acknowledgement, though, that the earth, the land, the trees, the stars were never yours to begin with? Right? You came here. This isn't, you don't own this, right? This isn't land that belongs. This is space, right? Or am I off on that?
Well, how I view the land is that we're borrowing it from our great grandkids.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's a
we have to
beautiful way to put
nurture
that.
that.
You have to, yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
That's
Gold
so
right there.
well said.
Yeah.
Through the pipeline in the Dakotas a few years back, I remember hearing an elder say,
Oh.
yeah. But I heard an elder said, this is when, well, we've had white people feeling guilt on many different things for a long time now. And there were a bunch of, I guess, ex-military guys kneeling before a chief apologizing. And he more or less said, you don't have to apologize because we don't own the land. He goes, we're all stewards of the land, all of us, because we act like one tribe has more urgency over certain things in life. And what he's saying is no, we have the same urgency because we all share this planet. And that's why I said, going back to my original point, just because you can change things doesn't always mean you should. And just because things are old doesn't mean they're outdated, right? There are traditions that we have forgotten about because of technology. And our whole humanity, technology drives us forward. And that's nothing new. The wheel was technology at one time. Fire was technology at one time. But it's how we use it and how do we remember and honor. And I think we've gotten so big in population that some of the simplest practices we just don't feel would work. What that says to me is it's not so much we've gotten so big as we've gotten too big in how big we live. Maybe we need to stay smaller in regards to what you're talking about, Jen, where you guys live. What the heck do I know here in Toronto about what the people in Larange need? Let the people in Larange determine that. Your job as a government to ensure that people have what they need to live the life the way they have. Your job is to ensure the freedoms that we're all born with. You didn't grant freedom. Your job is to ensure that we have what we were born with. And this is what I think is missing when I hear politicians talk. They talk value of Indigenous, but they really don't value it because I don't hear anyone inviting, right? When you're creating policies, what's the Indigenous way of looking, or not saying that we need to bring Indigenous policies into the land, but have you given consideration to certain traditions? Don't tell me we value our Indigenous population and then we do the complete opposite.
And through that, understand, and I'll use language as my explanation here. You can go to 4 different areas of Quebec and speak 4 different versions of French, right? In the province of Saskatchewan, Cree is our largest Indigenous language, but that doesn't mean we don't have Blackfoot, Sioux, and Dene, among others. And within those, there is dialects that belong to either their area specific or some crossover. Jen, you're nodding your head like I'm speaking some gospel here. When we look at and when I hear, right, and we even look at the Language Act of Canada, which only identifies 2 official languages, we don't identify, and it's not identified that, what's our GG right now? Mary, can't think of her last name, who doesn't speak French and was called out on this. But yet it was one of the Inuit cultures that said she can speak another language. We just don't identify it in our government books. There are hundreds of dialects within so many different languages. We see this worldwide, and right here in Canada between Plains Cree, Northern Cree, and Dene. Well, Northern Cree and Dene may have a few more similarities because there's some shared space, but it's still different. Yeah. And how do we accept, and how do we know when we're, as you said, Rawle, right? We're creating policies when we don't even have a clue. We've not been there. How do we write, draft, and interpret something that can be shared traditionally and non-traditionally, aka English, French, whatever, right? Our government standard, so that we have this knowledge and this expanse that everybody is accepted and understood.
Well, I think we need to stop thinking that there's just one Indigenous voice and one Indigenous. When we use Indigenous as There are many different tribes. I don't expect you to put out a referendum for everything, but I think when you're making national policies, are you speaking to the various regions and the different representations, and who truly has the voice? Is it the tribe elders, or is it the elected official? I think that, you know, there's in certain tribes there's a battle going on with, well, who really has the voice. I don't care. I think it's time for us to change the dialogue. My thing is, it's pointless the history that we come from, right? From the originals that were here when the settlers showed up, to the settlers that came, to everyone that died on these lands, for us to be still having this frivolous conversation when what we're talking about is humans, and we all come from a tribe, and I think we should love and respect our tribes, but also recognize other tribes are just as important. And now here we live under this blanket tribe of Canada. So that's one of the things I want to ask you, Jen, as an Aboriginal woman, an Indigenous woman, what does Canada mean to you? No, it's a big question. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but
yeah. It's right now, Canada, what it means to me is, I guess, home. Like, this is home. It's not home just to the Indigenous people. It's home to many people. And we should all, like, of course, secretly, I'm kind of like, yeah, we're better because we're Canadian.
that's why I became a Canadian citizen.
And we apologize too much.
Yeah,
But
actually, you know what, Jenny? The rest of the world does too. I realize in the States, we like to say that's a Canadian thing. It isn't. Americans, oh man, everyone, I'm so sorry. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Like, we all have our quirks, and that's fine. And being a Canadian, if you will, means that we're tough. We can withstand whatever. Because, and the premise of Canada, like, it's a good idea. It's an awesome idea. But our execution is kind of faltering. It's kind of like,
I love that.
Because, like, we still have our women's rights up here, which I'm like, yay. Like, Roe v. Wade, it's like, what? They just went back like 80 years. And I'm like, it's mind-blowing to me. But we still try to maintain the democracy, if you will. But our democracy is not a true democracy. We like the idea of it, but our execution of it sucks. We gotta work on that. In my opinion, I would have to say a country this big, maybe our best bet would have to be either socialism or communism, because we are a huge country. And I don't mean communism like what happened back in the Cuban Missile Crisis or fascism. But let's look at today. We are turning into a fascist state. And it bugs me. It really bugs me, because it's like, we can change it if we want. But and a lot of the people that we put in power need to realize it and hear the voices of the people, because if they don't, we could have like a French Revolution thing happening here in Canada, and it's not good. We don't want that.
Oh, and I hear what you're saying, and I think there's many voices that feel that way. I am personally, I'm not down with socialism and communism, because I see that's what's happening right now, actually. And it's been going on for a while. It didn't just start. Because to me, socialism and communism have never worked on any part of this planet. Some people argue, well, we don't have a true version of a democracy. I said, we have democracy. I agree with you. We don't practice it the way it should be practiced, because we allow this bastardized version of capitalism to dictate everything. So, in principle, I understand it, but when I look around, I have not seen socialism work if anything, socialism is really a front for totalitarianism. And what I believe, people even misunderstand what the Supreme Court did a couple of weeks ago with abortion. They didn't abolish abortion. Abortion hasn't been abolished. What they're saying is what I think we're talking about. They're saying this actually belongs in the hands of the people. It needs to go back to the states and let each state debate it out and then vote and decide what's important. And I think that's the precedent people are missing, that the Supreme Court is saying this does not belong at the federal level, just like a lot of things really doesn't belong at the federal level. So my pushback then, because I agree with, I used to always say this thing, the people. Well, do the people know what they want? Are the people truly talking and having meaningful debates that are based on critical thinking and facts and data, not just feelings, to really emphasize what they want, number one. Number two, these politicians are the way they are because we kind of checked out a long time ago and let them run the show, where we have forgotten what it means to be a citizen and what democracy means. So this is why this communism and socialism seems like such a good idea. And I don't know if anyone's ever actually stopped and looked what it means. I used to probably think that way because I was very much left when I was younger. I am not right or left. I like to try to stay in the middle, and depending on the situation or the policy, what's coming down, I can go either way because I look for what makes sense. Not, because I'm conservative or liberal, I have to. There's so many policies in place right now that make no sense and people are supporting it. So, I hear what you're saying and I agree in principle, but I think we really need to step back because as much as it's easy to blame the government, I have to put it on the people. We checked out a long time ago, right? And going back to Randall's point, one of the reasons he understands is because he took the invitation and went into someone else's backyard, someone else's home to understand. There was a show a few years back, I don't know if it's still on APTN, on inviting Canadians, predominantly white Canadians, to go and spend time on reservations, because most Canadians have never been on one. But you don't need to go to a reservation to meet an indigenous person. Most people don't know any indigenous, or if they do, it's like, what do you know about these people? Well, if you spend time with them, you'll realize they're just like you. So they're not these people. And that's one of the things I took away from the show, listening to a number of people who, now it's a show and things can be edited and they can sway you, but the premise was a good one. We live in this land. We like to keep saying, I'm on the unceded lands, well, then what are you doing about it? Because saying a land acknowledgement means nothing. Are you going out, getting to know the indigenous population, asking them, what do they propose, as opposed to, this is what I think our government's been doing for too long, dictating this is what has to happen. Because why? Not every tribe thinks the same way. How do I know that? Not every Black person has the same damn voice and thinks the same way, because the way I think goes against the Black narrative.
I can assure you, not every mixed, total, chaotic background white individual is the same either.
Yeah. So I think we need to really pump the brakes and go, okay, before we start making demands, what the heck do we want? What does freedom mean? What does democracy mean? Because I know the history of this country. I know the history of, well, not all the history, but I know the history of most of the countries on this planet, because they all come up out of conquering. They were conquering on Turtle Island before the white man even showed up. Between tribes. Slavery happened here before. So my thing is, what do we really know? Okay, forget the past. What do we know about today? What do you know about Jenny? What do you know about other people, right? That's one of the reasons I took the opportunity to get to know, particularly the elders. Well, maybe because I'm an elder now, the young ones.
You're in the Emerald Club, buddy. The Emerald Club.
Young ones in Kelowna put me in the elder category now, which I find, I take it as an honor. But
absolutely,
what do we really know about even of all Canadians or all Indigenous, whatever you would title? And one of the things I think these younger generations are pushing, they may not realize it, is that It's not that we may not love Canada, but we, to Jenny's point, we don't like the practice we've been seeing over the past how many years. We don't need any more laws. We need to look at the laws we have in the books and go, why are we not enforcing certain things? We don't need any more anti-racism laws. It's covered off in the Bill of Rights. Yeah. Why are we not enforcing these things? We don't need more treaties with our indigenous brothers and sisters. We have tons of treaties. Let's try honoring one.
There are seven in Saskatchewan, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. I don't have my treaty map in front of me.
Sure. And they're not all numbered chronologically, so I can't remember. It could be a little bit more, but there's enough of them in Saskatchewan to know, oh gosh, I'm probably wrong. And I'll admit, if I am wrong, somebody will come along and correct me, and that is okay. I appreciate being corrected on that. Oh, I hope somebody does. Yeah. But I can think of 7 areas, right? I can think of that, but I know that's just this funny rectangular piece of land that Jenny and I live on. You know, narrow at the top, wide at the bottom, but it is overall a rectangle, right? That does not speak for the other 11 parts of this country. This is 12 because there's 13. That's just our section of it. And I agree to Rawle's point. The whole story in the Supreme Court agreeing in the US that it's not a federal decision. It needs to be, and so let's move this into our terms, right? It's a provincial practice. Yes. What do the people of the section of land that is identified by borders that were identified by a federal government 155 years ago, right? We are one of the youngest countries in this place that hasn't been broken apart and moved around and whatever, right? We are one of the youngest countries. We still have so much to learn. We have so much to do. There's so much potential. If we just go back to, and Rawle and I talked about this in, I want to say it was episode 2, right? We talked about the size of the table, who's at the table, what do we do with the table, right? And this was, my initial point was we got to change, we got the baby in the bathwater, got to go, and we got to start again. By the end of that conversation, I realized that's not totally accurate. We know what the bathwater is. We know the baby is 155 years old, but it's this little baby in the bathwater. We don't necessarily need to dump it all. Maybe we just need to clean the water or add some warm water back. The baby's getting cold. The baby's getting cold. Let's take care of the baby. But taking care of the baby means that 33 million people, Canada, 34 million people need to be similar in some thoughts, not all, right? In some that we can really get down to what affects the people of Saskatchewan could be very different than what affects the people of Ontario, right? Using the 3 of us that are sitting here right now, and understanding our demographics, our peoples, our cultures, our land, all of these bits that are ours collectively are different separately. And that we can all move in and out of government type conversations or human to human type conversations because the experience where you live is different than where somebody else lives. And just because a policy may work or a law or a rule of the land may work in one space, that rule may not work in another because the land is different, the people are different, the outcome is different because it's not easily applied across the board. If we look at that and take that into consideration, our provincial government, those representatives should be the ones who are right. And this is careful because I'm going to start saying that maybe American politics is more what Canadian politics are like. But is there really a problem with that when the states decide who's going to sit in the federal positions where the people decide who sits and represents them provincially? Is there a problem with that? Are we looking at this wrong? Jenny, you're laughing. We are well past our time, but I really want to know what you find interesting.
We're going to go for a little longer.
Well, the state elected an orange monkey as their president, and we elected a centerfold as our prime minister.
So maybe we shouldn't put it in the hands of the.
But wait, there's more. right?
That's funny. That's funny.
Ontario just had a recent provincial election,
Yes, we
right?
did.
26% of your voter turnout came out.
26.
49% of that 26 voted the one way they did, hence the position that you're in, or not position, whatever. Hence the government outcome. That's the right way to put that. Provincially in Saskatchewan, it's not much different. We crossing the cusp of that 50% voter turnout has been years. I mean, I remember as like a young kid not voting yet, that number being higher. And so you're right, maybe putting it in the hands of the people may not always be the right decision, but how do we, as stewards of the land we live on, as stewards of this place we call home and has been home to what it's known as today for 155 years, how do we collectively decide, how do we show up, how do we, right? And this is going to be a little bit on self and a little bit on our brothers and sisters of the spaces that we live in, whether they're friends, family, whatever. How do we continually show up for ourselves and show up for our people and our friends, our brothers and sisters when it comes time to making important decisions that are like electing a leader that represents your area and what you believe in and what you agree with, that take that little section that you live in that's now going to go sit in, for Saskatchewan, sit in Regina and be representative when they call the House in Regina, Ontario, right? Federal, Ottawa, right? Like how do we encourage people to be, and hey, Jenny, you're a teacher, I'm going to ask you this as a teacher and as a indigenous individual, right? I'm looking at this two different ways, but how do we encourage our people, irrelevant of age, through getting to making a decision or not making a decision? Because not making a decision is still making a decision. You've chosen something. There's an outcome to all of it, right? Risk or benefit, or hoping, right? That middle space of not making any decision. How do we encourage people to speak up? How do we encourage people to show up, not for them, just for themselves, because you make a decision based on your personal point of view and what you agree with, but that person is from your area that you're going to elect, that you're ticking a box or coloring in the circle, whatever the rule is for the voter card that year, and walk away hoping for the best. And only 40% or 50% of the population overall actually shows up to do something. Hence, we end up with a centerfold. How do we change that, and how do we teach that, right? Because I mean, politics and whatnot is not a strong topic in social studies that I remember, unless curriculum is vastly changed. We brought in, thankfully, like years too late, but we brought in understanding, what residential schools were and what the past was, not to cause harm or anything, but to create an understanding of how we got to the place we are and how we acknowledge and do all these other bits with it. And I respect that. And I remember none of that being covered, and very little actually on indigenous when we were kids in school, right? And how all of that mixes, and we were right in the middle of it, right? We went to an inner city school in a bit of a rougher city. We saw a lot of things, but yet we didn't even talk about it. We experienced it. Life brought us to it. But how do we encourage people, through lack of trust, or nothing ever changes, or just not wanting to show up because my parents never showed up because their parents never showed up, or what? How do we start to change the narrative around how or why we can vote? Because we do have this beautiful little thing called democracy that we need to just, really actually work on.
Well, I'm gonna pick on Britain here with the Brexit.
Okay.
Because no one knew what they were voting for when it came to that time. And now that Brexit happened, they are realizing the downfalls of it. Like, they're out of the EU, their crops are going to like crap, and things are just falling apart around them. And Scotland's having a referendum about going into EU. And same with know what it is that you're voting for. First off, know the parties. Know, like, just educate yourself. We have this beautiful thing called Google. Use it. Second off is listen to your candidates. What do they stand for? Do they stand for what you stand for? And if not, don't vote for them. Use your voice in that way. And yeah, it's like, I know up here, we elected the same MP. Why? Because he will go tell the Saskatchewan government to go fly a kite. He's done that before. He got kicked out of.
Yep, he did.
Yep. And we're proud of that. It's like, yeah, he stood up for us. And my best, like, I guess my best advice is vote for someone who has the backbone to take on this entity called the government and to stick up for your rights, because that's what a good leader does. Like, he takes into account of the people and all the people that are around him and makes the best choice decision and stand in his convictions of that. Personally, I have nothing against Justin Trudeau. He hasn't come and pissed me off, but he's also not the greatest, in my opinion. So when I see like these bumper stickers like F Trudeau, and I'm like, what has he ever done to you? Like, honestly, what has Justin Trudeau ever done to harm this person? Nothing. He is being a leader, a pretty good leader through this pandemic. I must admit that. Like, he was pretty spot on. Some of his parts, like moistly.
The water box thingy.
Yeah. But, you know, like, through thick and thin, he got us through it. Yay. Do I have any personal vendetta? No, not really. He's not the guy I wanted in, but he's better than some of the other people. So, yeah, get to know what it is that you're voting for. So you're not voting to something that will like put you back.
Right.
And vote for the right people who has the strongest voice, not just for popularity.
Right. Can I add to that, Jen?
Yeah.
And because, you know, it's like, what do we do? I think it's kind of how we started this whole thoughtcast today when we started talking about healing. I think we need to pump the brakes, and, you know, these types of times that when you live in such discomfort, you know, there's many things in it, but to me, the foundational part of it, it's asking you, is your house in order? Where are you with your understanding of yourself? Where are you with your love of self, your like of self? Everyone is looking for something external, but yet they don't have it internally, number one. And if you don't have it internally, you'll never appreciate it when you do see it externally, or you'll invite it in, then you'll try to blow it up, or you'll just block it right off the bat. I think number one, we need to find ways to encourage people to really understand when we talk about self-empowerment and self-mastery, what that means. Number two, we need to stop getting our information from social media and from media, because they paint a picture to serve a narrative and everything is politicized. Whether Justin did a good job during the pandemic, that we can debate that. We can, you know, I don't think he did, but that's the beauty. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone has a choice to think how they think. I think one of the biggest problems is, as a teacher, you encourage young ones to participate in events that's going to develop character and teach them how to communicate and teach them the opportunity to learn about empathy and patience, right? And resiliency. These are not just words that live on a t-shirt. These are actual words you practice. And we encourage young ones to do these things, and then we grow up as an adult and we forget about it. I live in the greatest team there is. It's called Canada, and we're teammates. We may not all look at life the same. We may not all agree, but we agree to live by a certain way, a constitution that says we're a land of laws. And I'm not always going to get my way, but when I don't get my way, can I recognize that I am still part of this team? I'm with you. I didn't vote for Justin. I don't like Justin, the politician. I know nothing about the man to be calling him evil. They did the same thing with Stephen Harper, but then they did the same thing with John Chrétien and Mulroney and every leader. It's the The ones that are doing that are the ones that are not getting their way. That's what's going on in the States right now. No one stops to actually read anything. They jump based on what the media tells them. So I think for us to change this, that's why I keep putting it back on the people. Because I agree with you, really understand those who say they want to represent you. Pay attention to, are they coming around just in an election cycle? Or are they visible in your community throughout, doing things that shows that they're about community building and valuing? And thirdly, we need to put out messages that shows the incentive to change. People are not going to put themselves in further discomfort just to change. This is why the climate issue is having such problems. Because you want to change the climate, but you want to destroy the economy. You destroy the economy. What you're doing is you're destroying people's lives. And people are saying, yeah, we know the economy, the climate needs to be looked at, but we have to live right now. So we're having, maybe we're having the wrong conversations, or we're not phrasing things properly. What's the incentive for people to change? People only decide to move off of anything when they're incentivized by it. Just look at your own lives. It's not that we shouldn't want to use the resources, it's how we're using the resources. I don't believe in this climate change nonsense, because climate change is a reality. It's part of this planet that we do not control. I don't control the thermostat, neither does anyone. But I don't need to be a scientist to know that what we've been doing over the last 100 years is not making her happy.
She shows up and likes to show off, and it's not a show off. It's nope, we're setting a few things back.
So there's too much fear mongering going on. There's too much misinformation going on because we have so much around. I agree with you, Google it, but don't just stay on the first page of Google. You have to go really into Google to get some of the information you want, because they tend to only show you what they want. So what I'm really saying is, I think we have to ask ourselves a question. What the heck does it mean to be a citizen? And what does democracy truly mean? These are not passive words. These are active words. You have to work for it. We have to work to keep this country together if we value it, because
yes, I am struck with a phrase, brother, that came from a workplace. And it sticks on my desk, and it's not just about my workplace. It's not just about my life. It's about how I have conversations with other people as well. And the acronym is LOVE. Live our values every day.
I love that, yeah.
Live our values every day. Now, that can be personal. That could be work, that could be, all the different things that we do as individuals, but that is also our community. That is also our greater community. That is also coast to coast to coast, which we are one of the few countries that gets to say that, right? We go coast to coast to coast. Yeah. Not many get that opportunity. And being the steward of the land and being able to say that and understand that, right? And I agree, some of the climate, she definitely is letting us know that we've pissed her off. We've done a few things that we need to go back and revisit, not necessarily throw the baby in the bathwater out, just figure out, hey, the baby might need some clean water. She's a little dirty, and she's letting us know she's not happy about being chilly, right? Or being too hot, whatever it might be. But it really, if you can walk away from absolutely, or walk into anything that you do, and you can say, live our values every day, our self, our environment, our people, our nation. Yeah. Can we say that about absolutely everything we do? And I'm sure from time to time we can, and I'm sure from time to time we can't. That's not the question. The question is, when you walk away from a moment, or you're walking into a moment, or you're making this government decision, right? And showing up for you and your community, it's the value of it. Rawle, you mentioned value, which is what brought me into this.
Yeah,
right? It is the value of what we do.
And I agree with that, but I don't even want to just talk it. I've had enough. No. As much as I'm a poet about words, I had enough talk. It's not talk. Can we walk it?
That's the live part.
What I think a lot of these young ones are saying, even Jenny touched on that earlier, it's the practice. I don't want to hear love anymore. I want to see the practice of love. But it's not just love. It's got to be just. That's one of the problems. We're not just. We're seeing things that we know are not just. I had this experience yesterday. sitting on an open mic show in a new show in England, waiting to go on. And if you look at my my name, it says Rawle James, human, male. They're not pronouns. That's just, I'm not going to do he, she. I'm not writing some great literature project. But that's how I'm going to say, this is who I am. Anyway, I'm sitting there waiting to, I'm taking in the poets and waiting to recite. And then I get this message that some in the room might be offended by your choice of pronouns. And if you want to stay, you have to change them. And I'm reading this, and I didn't even get a chance to respond. I was put in the waiting room and basically booted out. I'm like, wow. So then I pulled up my email, because I had the organizer's email, and I explained the situation, and I said, I find it very interesting. You want blind acceptance. You're fighting bigotry, but yet you're going to practice the same bigotry. No one reached out to me. And as you know, with Zoom, you can private chat. Say, yep. Ask a question. No question was asked, nothing. The assumption was made, and that someone's feelings might be hurt. Not once did they stop to think about, my feelings might be hurt by this act. And this is the world we're living in now.
I think we touched on this briefly, right? We talked about, and Jenny mentioned it, and we've been through it. They didn't ask for the opportunity to visit you at your house.
Yeah.
They made a decision, different place on where you're at. There was no meeting ground. There was no invitation. There was no welcoming. Hey, help me understand you.
Yeah. And this is the world we're living in. It's all about feelings, and that's fine. Feelings and emotions are very important, but there's more to it than that. And just being able to sit down and go, if someone was there, might have been offended. They didn't even say they were. They said might be. So they were operating like the minority report. We're going to anticipate that people are going to be pissed off because of this, which is fine. As a good moderator, you need to read the room, but what about asking a question? So I composed this email, blah, blah, blah. I just said, basically, you guys made a huge assumption. You don't know me. And I'm not going to now tell you, well, my trans friend, or sprout out all the things I've done with the trans. I don't need to justify anything to anyone. What you should have done was ask me a question.
And I want to
see clarity. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Rawle. I want to go back to the post. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm gonna anyway. That's how that works, right?
Hurt feelings report.
Somebody said their feelings got hurt, so it's not my fault your feelings got hurt. That's
the end of today's podcast, because my feelings are hurt. No, sorry. I don't want to make fun of people. It's just but it is asking. Sorry. Go ahead.
And it brings me back, and I want to just take another second to reflect, right? I opened up my section of the show before introducing Jenny with this. The loudest, and this is Adam Grant, right? The loudest voices rarely represent the majority. They're usually speaking for the extremes, and you won't understand the views of a group until you're invited to the quieter voices of invited the quieter voices into the discussion.
Yeah. That
is a prime example of it, right? Policy making for lands that people have no question about is a prime example of that.
Mm-hmm.
The outcry of a population, the riot, although Canada's a pretty peaceful rioting kind of place, but we see them, right? Not only here, but we see them everywhere.
We saw it 2 years ago.
Convoy.
We did, yeah. I don't think there was a lot of, but see, we come back to the convoy. Great call. But we only heard the loudest voices, right? The media told us these were right. The individuals that desecrated the monuments outside of the house in Ottawa, right? Those were the voices of the extreme. When you had conversations and listened to those that were the quieter voices, you understood more of what was going on. The news gave us an amazing sensationalized version of what the convoy was, running west to east, and all these things, and you got to watch out, and they're gonna this and they're gonna that, and so we hyped up.
A bunch of Nazis in there. Yeah, I know.
I mean, there was definitely some in the group, but again, we're talking about the loudest voices are speaking at the extreme, and the quieter voices within that were open to discussion and wanting to talk more. if you are listening to the extreme and absorbing from the extreme, right? And you're not willing to fact check yourself. You're not willing to check multiple resources. You're not willing to ask your representative in the area that you live in, you know, speaking to government stuff. If you're not willing to do that, all you're going to hear is the extremes. Invite the conversation inward, right? I accept you to my home to have this conversation, whether it's in this virtual box or in person or telephone, whatever. If I invite you to have a conversation, I want to learn just as much from you as you may want to learn from me and what I may see as an issue or a whatever. But when we only hear the voices of the extreme, and that is what we base all of our decisions and opinions on, and then we watch past leaders who have lost their seat because they were the waving flag of, oh, my people want this. Nope. They actually want this. So I stand for this, but I'm going to say this out loud, right? O'Toole was a waving flag.
That goes for all of us, everyone, not just the extremes, because, Jenny jokingly talked about, they elected a carrot top. I don't trust what the media tells us about Trump. I don't trust what the media tells us about anyone. I, firsthand experience going down to Phoenix 4 years ago. I went down with my Canadiana attitude, thinking I knew America, and although I grew up there, but I thought I knew because I heard it on CNN, whatever. And my brother said, you know nothing about Trump. But that's not the point. The point is, if we live in a democracy, we have to accept our viewpoints aren't always going to line up. Even
and
within
that's the beauty of it.
Even within your own tribe. But I think that beauty has been eroded away. I listened to the rhetoric coming out of what you're talking about, Roe versus Wade. Now we got to get rid of the Supreme Court. Why? Because your side didn't win? This is what's going on now. It's like, okay, what does it mean to live in a democracy? Because I'm seeing one-sided democracy. And if you get your way, the narrative is you get your way, it's democratic. But if you don't, something is wrong. Then what are we teaching these young? We should stop encouraging young ones to play hockey or to do drama or to do rite of passages. If we're going to encourage them to do that and then grow up and go, when you're an adult, forget all those lessons. If you don't get your way, something is wrong. We are the problem. The people are the problem. That's to steal a line from the American Constitution. The first three are the most important. We, the people. But then we, the people, have to know what the heck we want. And that's why I said, going back to how we started this conversation, because I'm looking for a way to go full circle and wrap it up. Here we are going on 2 hours. Yeah. And all this says to me is we got to have Jenny back.
Yes.
But is that what? And maybe, maybe we do a part 2 with Jenny and not wait till down the road if she's open to that. And we continue this and we'll talk about this next time. What does it mean to live in Canada and to be part of a democracy? And I don't care if you're indigenous, if you identify white, Black, Chinese, Muslim, Christian, I don't care. These are labels. But what matters most is human. Are we human? Do we value life? This whole abortion issue isn't about the right to abort. It's about, do we value life? They're arguing about when life starts. I don't care. Do we value life? Because as far as I know, even if I disagree with you, I still have to disagree with a human. That means we're in this together. And it's through sharpening our knives against each other in debate that it sharpens. And what it does, it allows you to cut away the fat and go, you know what? That thought doesn't serve me anymore. I used to believe that, but from talking to Jenny, you've helped me to see it a different way, or invited me to maybe go do some more research, that then I can move away from that viewpoint. We can't do that if we're yelling and screaming at each other. And we have forgotten how to talk. My understanding of some indigenous tribes from back in the day, even the ones that were warring within their own, they sat down and talked and listened to voices of dissension, because the chief realized they didn't know it all. Yep. And your job as a leader is to hear the different voices, and then the tribe will trust your wisdom to make the right choice. Not everyone's going to agree with it. But
okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. We definitely, I saw your full circle. I see your goal. I'm going to do a couple of things here, Jenny. I'm going to invite you to something. You can accept or not accept, because there's going to be a couple of things. As a reminder to everybody, this was a wrap up of episode 4 because we couldn't figure it out. We've got up to 20 kind of in thought process, but we were on 4. We're thankful to have Jenny here, who, again, a brief wrap up of her bio, aside from all things that we know about each other from our years of being connected in life, a teacher by profession, a card reader, a healer, a Reiki practitioner and master, a channeler medium, and akashic reader, a mom, an indigenous woman practicing traditions, a student, and a teacher at all times. From the very bottom of my heart, thank you for accepting the invitation to be on the show. And I would love if I could send you another invitation to another show. It is up to you, and you don't need to answer that here, but I'm going to ask you one thing and it doesn't have to even be related to our 2 hours of conversation today. If you could leave any person, our listener, somebody might see this on YouTube, whatever. If you could leave one thing on the table for somebody, a phrase, a nugget, a whatever, a thing, what would you leave on the table for a person? What would you offer?
Kind of like
I'm
a
putting you
parting
on the
gift
spot.
of parting wisdom here.
A nugget, yeah, whatever. And if it's okay, I put you on the spot, so I'm inviting you to this. You can decline my invitation.
No, see the change you want to be.
Mm.
And have that faith and that power in you to change it.
Right.
Because it all comes back to you.
I love it.
It all does. Yep. Well said, Jen.
Thank
Well,
you.
unlike Randall, I am going to put you on the spot. No, I'm not. I would love if you would consider, and we'll obviously talk about this. Randall and I agreed to do, we do 2 shows a month. We would do the first week with a guest, and then the second week would just us be riffing. But I would seriously love for you to come back, because, and I don't mean next month, I mean even for the next episode, because this is an important topic. This is important for me, for us. When I say us, I don't mean you two. I don't want to put words in your mouth. It may not be important for you. Both of you might be going, what the hell is this guy talking about? But I just think this is a conversation worth carrying on, and with the momentum. Because my concern is what we're doing to countries like Canada. It's not perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. But man, my understanding of the world, I still rather live here.
Yep.
I still rather live here with the past that I know and all the blood that's been shared. I still rather live here. Because what I've learned is, with the past and all the blood been shed, has existed in other countries. And these countries are just new terms based on recent history. These lands have been here with people long before Canada or America or England or even Africa. There were people here, and we were more or less doing the same damn thing. So my thing is, we like to say our humanity is a civilized and intelligent one. Then if we're truly civilized and intelligent, it's time for us to act that way. We have a long litany of intel that shows if we continue doing the things we're doing, we know what results we're going to get. So it's upon us to learn. And this is why I would love us to talk more about this, because this does tie into that self-empowerment and healing and the self-mastery. And as healers, I love we can have these conversations, but maybe next conversation is when we talk about Canada, we infuse more of that, because I think this conversation is important. I think there's many Canadians want to hear this, and I'm hoping that they're having these types of conversations, because I'll end it like, I still rather live here.
Yes.
Yep.
When Jenny said, what does Canada mean? And you said home, that was immediate resonation. Yeah. And that's what I'm hearing it in less words. This is home. This is it. Yeah.
And there's a reason why many Indigenous men and women put on a uniform representing Canada to defend Canada. So whether you want to sit or colonize, I don't care. You're entitled to that opinion, but this is home. And I find those that want to tear it down, I go, you'll miss it when you don't have it.
Exactly.
And then you're going to wish you had it.
And
So
you
anyway,
won't be able to do it. Yes.
we will keep our audience up to date. I would love to have Jenny back. This has been a most riveting
Yes.
conversation and dialogue. And then as Jenny, you see how we operate. We don't argue and fight and say you're wrong. It's let's build upon what each other is saying, try to understand it. And, you know, it's just real Canadians, real humans talking about things that affect all our lives, not just some of our lives. The mere fact that we breathe the same air, walk the same earth, drink the same water.
Mhm.
We all come from woman, and death will visit us all.
Mhm.
Means we are
Mhm.
here, we are human. We're not just bound by gravity, we are bound by our humanness. We are in this together, and it's only together we can do this. The good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful. So I hope you accept the invitation to come back, because this 2 hours just flew by. We usually
I
try
agree.
to
Yeah.
I agree.
go to maybe an hour, maybe hour 15. I kept looking at the time and I go, screw this.
Flow.
Let
Flow
it-
is here. Flow, just flow.
Yeah, let it go.
So I want
Yeah.
to share something with you guys.
Yes.
Yep.
Pulled the tarot card.
Yep.
The
I
world,
love it. Mm-hmm.
meaning legacy and creating a legacy for the future.
And I just pulled one of my cards and mine said, Goddess of Creation,
Mhm.
right?
I didn't bring mine to work with me, but I thought about it this morning.
You should always have it with you. But anyway, Jen, like
You
I said,
should.
not to put you on the spot, but I do hope you consider Randall.
Oh
and
yeah,
talking.
definitely.
All right, well then she just said so, Randall. So
That's fair.
You guys are like my brothers, man. Why not?
I love it.
well,
And
you know,
you
and
are a sister.
you are a
Always have
sister,
been, though.
and I consider you my oracle. And you know, when I need you, I know where to find you. I still have the akashic reading that you give me that I read very regularly, because there's so much to unpack and
Yes.
what you said. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, you just heard it straight out of the woman's mouth. She will be back. Our next taping is on the 20th. If obviously if that doesn't work in Jenny's schedule, we'll make it work. But we want to definitely have this conversation. I really want to and to step in more into your understanding of indigenous, and what do you see as some of the issues other than representation from the federal government? Because anyway, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole again. But it's not so much a bigger question. From where you live, what are the indigenous challenges? What are the good? What are the things that people are doing that are positive in your community? Not just indigenous, whites, blacks, whoever. But
Mhm.
I think it's an opportunity for our listeners to get to hear indigenous and indigenous voice, because you're not the voice of all indigenous people.
Mhm.
So also, as an indigenous woman, as a healer, you are plugged into things. So I think this was just a really good kicking off point. And we look forward to having you back to continue this conversation about Canada, our love for this country. How do we hopefully encourage her and invite her and her people to practice differently? To steal a word from you, Jen, is to practice. So we can get to a place where when we take our last breath here, we can go, we've left it better than we found it, and we left it in a good place for the next generation. And I think most Canadians right now are concerned of what we're leaving for the next, not even the next generation, the next 7 generations.
Yep.
That's
Mhm.
concern.
To quote Jenny from earlier too, the borrowing from our grandchildren,
Yes.
right?
That
Our
was
present
brilliant.
moment, borrowing from our grandchildren. Yep.
If you don't mind, Jen, I might steal that and use it in a poem, because it's a brilliant line. It's very true. We don't own it. We're borrowing it. So I love that.
Yeah.
Any last comments before we wrap it up, Jen?
No, this was fun, and I really enjoyed
That's
it.
good.
Oh, nice. I'm glad. Well, tell your friends, get them to listen. I am going to probably, I have a coaching session coming up, and I'll download it. I'll probably I'll probably load it up tomorrow. So before I load it up, I'll buzz you both just to let you know. But Anyway, Jen, thank you for being a guest
Yes.
on episode 4.
4.
Mhm.
4, thank you for being for Where's the Balance. We look forward to talking with you more in 2 weeks. Randall, my brother, you know I love you.
Yes.
Really.
You know I love you too, man.
Yeah, I'm glad that we decided to partner up and do this craziness. We're not sure.
I agree. And why and how we came to Where's the Balance, because it's not a debate and it's always about the discussion.
It's about a discussion.
Yeah.
Well, because we all have things to say and we want to say it, and I want to hear it and not pass judgment. Like I said, Jenny said a couple of things that I don't agree with. Okay, so what?
Yep. That's the
You don't have to
beauty
agree. You
and
don't
the
have to-
balance of us as people.
Yeah.
In this
Well, I
nation,
think
in this beautiful
we
place.
need to remember that we don't have to agree, but we can still be respectful.
Yep,
And if
100%.
I live in a democracy. It's not one-sided. The freedoms that I have, you have. And my job is to actually help ensure your freedoms are not trampled on.
Living our values every day.
It's like Jenny said, practice. Anyway, we love
Yes.
our audience. We love each other, which is important. Not just say it. We need to practice it and show it. I love this country.
Mhm.
And the thing I love most about this country is not that we get to say coast to coast to coast, although it's very cool.
Yeah.
It is very
Yeah.
cool. And it's not the beautiful landscape, because my God, this country is beautiful from coast to coast to coast. I'm one of these people that love the prairies. I mean, the prairies are boring. You're not looking properly. But most importantly, what I love is the people,
Mhm.
all of them.
Mhm.
I may not like them all, but I love them all, because why? We are human. So
Mhm.
until in 2 weeks, we'll see you guys all. Thanks for tuning in. If you choose to tune in, we'll assume that you're tuning in. We're going to tap.
Yeah, we're just gonna roll with it. We're just gonna roll
We're
with
just
it.
gonna
They're
roll with it.
tuning
Tap
in.
into the energy
They are
until you're
listening
tuning
to
in.
this somewhere. We're going with it. Thank
Either
you.
way,
We
it was-
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jenny, again for being
Yep.
here. And in 2 weeks, we get to go through this again. Where's the balance? It's not a debate. It's about the discussion. Thanks to my partner in crime, co-host, and brother Rawle on behalf of us. And thank you to Jenny. We appreciate if you're listening. You got comments, concerns, you have ideas, you want to have a different view. We are always open to hear it, as long as you're open to discussing it. It's about the discussion. We're not debating who's right or wrong, because we all make mistakes too. Anyway, this is a wrap to the show. Thank you so much for listening in, being here. Thanks, Jenny, again for being in attendance. And we will see you on the next episode, which will be episode 5. Have a wonderful, fantastic, beautiful, ugly day, everybody, because all of it matters.
All right, guys. Love you.
All right.
All right.